The lock turned easier than I remembered. 5 years away, and the house still smelled the same. Coffee, old wood, and something floral my mother always kept in a bowl by the window. Voices from the kitchen, multiple. I moved through the hallway, boots silent on the carpet I'd walked across 1,000 times as a kid. Then I saw her. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. My mother, Linda Solen. Gray streaks in her hair she'd never had before, wearing a black apron with white trim, like something from a restaurant. She was carrying a tray of crystal glasses, shoulders hunched, looking smaller than I remembered. Behind her, seated at my kitchen table like it was a country club lounge, were 3 people I recognized immediately. Marissa, my wife, looking polished and cold in a cream-colored dress. Her father, Grant Weller, tapping his phone with the air of a man who had never been told no. Her mother, Patricia, inspecting her nails with bored attention. My mother saw me first. Her face went white, then red, then she smiled so hard I thought she might cry. "Asher." "You're early," Marissa said, setting down a glass of wine. "We weren't expecting you until Thursday." "I'm home," I said, looking at my mother still holding the tray. "Mom, what's going on?" "Oh, she's just helping out," Marissa said before Linda could answer. "We've been planning the anniversary party for weeks. Your mother doesn't mind, do you, Linda?" My mother glanced at Grant, then back at me. "It's fine, sweetheart. Really." Grant looked up from his phone. "Asher, good to see you back. Thought you'd at least call ahead, though. Bit unprofessional, just showing up unannounced. You can't just drop in on people without warning." "In my house," I said slowly. He blinked. "Sorry?" "This is my house. My mother's house. I'm not dropping in. I live here." Patricia's voice came out like poisoned honey. "Oh, Asher, don't be dramatic. We're family. Linda's been wonderful about hosting us. We couldn't do this without her." My mother nodded too quickly. "It's really no trouble." It was trouble. I could see it in her shoulders, in the way her hands gripped that tray. Marissa stood, smoothing her dress. "Why don't you go unpack? We're in the middle of discussing the menu. We'll catch up later." I didn't move. Grant sighed like a boss addressing a difficult employee. "Look, Asher, we appreciate your service, but you've been gone 5 years. Things work a certain way now. Your mother's been happy to help out, and we've made sure she's comfortable. No need to act like something's wrong." I walked to where my mother stood, took the tray from her hands and set it on the counter. Then I did something I hadn't done since I was 17, back when I first enlisted. I saluted her. Straight-backed, crisp, proper military salute. She stared at me, eyes going glassy with tears. Then I turned to Marissa. "Enjoy this while you still can." Her eyebrows went up. "Excuse me?" I walked past her father, past her mother, back toward the hallway. Behind me, Grant muttered something about attitude problems. Marissa's heels clicked as she followed. "Asher, what are you talking about?" I stopped at the base of the stairs. "Exactly what it sounds like." "Are you threatening me? Because if you think you can come back here after 5 years and just start making demands, I'm not threatening anyone. I'm just observing how things are, observing how they're going to change." She laughed, high and brittle. "Change? Nothing's going to change, Asher. This is how things work now. You don't get to just walk back in and upset everything." "We'll see." "No, we won't see. You'll settle down, realize how good Mom and Dad have been to your mother, and apologize." She crossed her arms. "You always do. You always back down." In my pocket, my phone buzzed. A scheduled email I'd sent myself 5 years ago, set to arrive the moment I returned home. Just one line. "Remember what you're protecting." I'd been 27 when I wrote that. Even then, before I left, I'd seen the signs. The way Marissa talked about my mother, the casual comments about our place in her family's world. I should have known it would get worse. I looked at Marissa, standing there confident and entitled, absolutely certain I would fold. "You're right," I said quietly. "I usually do back down." She smiled, triumphant. "Not this time." I went upstairs and closed the door to my old bedroom behind me. The room told its own story, and it wasn't a good one. My old bedroom, the one I'd slept in from age 7 until I enlisted at 19, had been transformed into something I barely recognized. The bed was the same frame, same headboard, but everything else was different. Decorative pillows I'd never bought, at least a dozen of them, arranged in some specific pattern I was apparently supposed to understand. A vanity desk that wasn't mine, covered in her things, makeup bags, jewelry boxes, a laptop I didn't recognize, stacks of magazines about weddings and home design. My dresser had been pushed into the corner, half hidden behind a rolling rack of her clothes. I walked over and opened the top drawer, empty. The second drawer had 3 of my old t-shirts pushed to one side. Everything else was hers. I opened the closet. My uniforms, the ones I'd kept here, were shoved to the far left side, compressed into maybe 6 inches of rod space. Everything else, and there was a lot of everything else, belonged to Marissa. Dresses, blouses, coats, shoes lined up on the floor in neat rows. This wasn't shared space. This was occupation. I sat on the edge of the bed, pushing aside the decorative pillows, and opened my phone. The scheduled email was still on the screen. I clicked through to the full message, the one I'd written to myself half a decade ago. Remember what you're protecting. Document everything. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let them make you think you're crazy. You're not. Stay sharp, stay focused, and don't let anyone take advantage of Mom while you're gone. Ever. Past Asher had been smarter than I gave him credit for. I scrolled through old messages, going back to the beginning of my deployment. Marissa's texts from the first year were normal enough. Sweet, even. Miss you so much. Counting down the days. Your mom and I went to dinner. She says hi. Standard spouse correspondence, the kind thousands of military families exchanged every day. Then, around month 14, something shifted. The tone changed, subtle at first. Your mom is helping us plan the summer gala. She's really good at organizing. Mom offered to handle the catering for Dad's retirement party. So sweet of her. Don't worry about anything at home. We're keeping your mom busy and involved. I'd thought it was nice at the time. Family bonding. I'd even sent back a message thanking Marissa for including her, for making sure she wasn't lonely. Now, reading them again with different eyes, I saw the pattern. Every helping was a test. Every doesn't mind was a boundary crossed. By year 3, the messages barely mentioned me at all. They were updates about events, parties, obligations, all featuring my mother in various service roles. Linda's doing the flowers for the spring fundraiser. Your mom agreed to coordinate the volunteer staff for the auction. Linda's been amazing, handled all the setup for Patricia's birthday dinner. Setup, coordination, volunteer staff, words that sounded nice but meant something else. Meant work, meant expectation, meant my mother doing things for people who should have been treating her like family, not like hired help. I should have called more, should have asked harder questions, should have insisted on video calls where I could see her face, read her expression, catch the things she wouldn't say out loud. But I'd been focused on my job, on staying alive, on completing the mission. I'd trusted Marissa to take care of things at home. I'd believed her when she said everything was fine. Mistake, major mistake. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, Marissa's car was still in the driveway. So were her parents' matching luxury sedans. They hadn't left. They'd just moved to a different room, probably regrouping, strategizing how to handle my unexpected resistance. Downstairs, I heard voices again. My mother's, apologetic. Patricia's, soothing but firm. They were talking about tomorrow's schedule, about what needed to be prepared, about timing and coordination, and all the little details that somehow required my mother's constant attention. I pulled out my phone and started taking notes. Not just what I was seeing now, but everything I could remember from the messages, from the patterns, from the years of gradual erosion I'd been too far away to stop. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about building a case, building evidence, understanding exactly what they'd done so I could undo it. My door opened without a knock. Marissa walked in, closing it behind her. "We need to talk," she said. "Now you want to talk. Don't be childish." She crossed her arms, leaning against the door. "I understand you're upset. I get it. You come home, things look different than you expected, and you feel protective. That's natural. But you're overreacting." "Am I?" "Yes. Your mother is fine. Better than fine, actually. Before we started including her in our events, she was lonely, isolated, spending all day in this house by herself, just waiting for letters from you. We gave her purpose, we gave her community, we made her part of something bigger than herself. I let her talk, let her build her narrative. She's happy, Asher, genuinely happy. You saw her smile when you walked in. That's because she's been useful, she's been needed. Everyone needs that." Marissa moved closer, her voice softening. "I know it looks like work to you, but to her, it's belonging, it's family, it's connection." In an apron. That was her choice. She wanted to look professional. We didn't ask her to wear it. You didn't stop her. Why would we? She was proud of it. Proud to be part of the team, to contribute, to show that she could handle responsibility. Marissa sat on the bed beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Expensive. Everything about her was expensive. You've been gone a long time. You don't know what's been happening here. You don't know how much she's grown, how confident she's become. Don't take that away from her just because it makes you uncomfortable. It was a good speech. Practiced. She'd probably prepared it the moment I walked out of the kitchen. Does she get paid? I asked. Marissa blinked. What? For all this work, this contributing, this professional responsibility? Does she get paid? She's family. We don't pay family. But you expect her to work like staff. It's not work if she enjoys it. Does she enjoy it? Marissa stood, frustration finally breaking through her calm exterior. Ask her yourself. Go downstairs right now and ask her if she wants us to stop including her. Ask her if she wants to go back to being alone in this house with nothing to do. See what she says. I will. Good. She walked to the door, then paused. But Asher, when she tells you she's happy, when she tells you she wants to keep helping, I expect an apology from you to my parents for the scene you made tonight. She left, closing the door harder than necessary. I sat there for another minute, then went to find my mother. She was in the kitchen, washing the wine glasses by hand, even though there was a dishwasher 3 feet away. Grant and Patricia were gone, probably sent away by Marissa to give us space. The house was quiet, except for the sound of running water. Mom! She turned, startled. Asher, honey, are you okay? I should be asking you that. I'm fine. She dried her hands on a towel. Not the apron. She'd taken that off. Really, I'm sorry about earlier. I know it must have looked strange to you, but how long has this been going on? She sighed, leaning against the counter. They started visiting more after you'd been gone about 6 months. Just for dinners at first. Family time. It was nice having people around. Then Patricia mentioned she was organizing a charity event and needed some help with the planning. I offered. I used to do event coordination, before you were born. It felt good to use those skills again. And then? And then it became more regular. More events, more planning. They'd come over a few times a week. Then most days. Then, she trailed off. They didn't mean anything bad by it, Asher. They included me, made me feel useful. In an apron. That was for tonight. They were bringing some important guests, and I wanted to look presentable. Mom, you're not the help. You're the homeowner. This is your house. I know that. Do you? She looked at me for a long moment. What do you want me to say? The truth? Do you want them here? Do you want to keep doing this? Her hands twisted the towel. They're your wife's family. That's not an answer. It's complicated. It's not. I moved closer. Mom, it's simple. Do you want to spend your days serving them? Yes or no? They need help. They can hire help. They have money. They're family. Family doesn't treat each other like this. She set down the towel, and when she looked at me, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not quite tears, but close. You don't understand, honey. When you left, I was so alone, so scared. Every day wondering if you were safe, if you'd come home, and they were here. They kept me busy, kept my mind occupied. I needed that. And now? Now you're home. She smiled, but it was fragile. Now I don't need to be so busy anymore. I hugged her. She felt smaller than I remembered, more delicate. 5 years ago, she'd been strong, solid. Now she felt like someone who'd been carrying too much weight for too long. It's going to be okay, I told her. I promise, it's going to be okay. She nodded against my shoulder, but I knew it wouldn't be okay, not yet, because people like the Wellers didn't just walk away, they didn't just accept defeat, they regrouped, they strategized, and I needed to be ready. The neighborhood park was empty at dawn. I liked it that way, quiet, clean, a place to think without interruption. I sat on the bench near the duck pond and watched the water ripple in the pre-dawn breeze. Somewhere behind me, a jogger passed, headphones in, oblivious to everything except whatever was playing in their ears. The sky was turning from gray to pale blue, that strange in-between light where everything looks unreal. I needed clarity. I needed to see the whole picture before I made my next move. 5 years. I'd been away for 5 years, and during that time, my wife and her family had steadily taken control of my mother's life. Not through force, not obviously, just gradually, methodically, like water wearing down stone. They'd convinced her she was obligated to serve them. They'd made her small. They'd erased her boundaries so gradually she probably didn't even realize it was happening until it was already done. That kind of manipulation didn't appear overnight. It was calculated, deliberate, strategic. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through more old messages, going deeper into the archive. The pattern was even clearer now. Around month 18 of my deployment, Marissa had stopped asking how I was doing first. She'd started with updates about events, about my mother's contributions, about how busy everyone was. I'd become an afterthought in my own correspondence. Then there were the photos she'd sent, dozens of them. Look how great Linda did with the decorations. Your mom's tablescapes are amazing. Linda organized everything perfectly. In every photo, my mother was in the background, working, setting up, cleaning, serving, always in motion, always doing something for someone else. And in the foreground, Marissa and her family, smiling, posing, enjoying the fruits of my mother's labor while taking credit for the event's success. I should have seen it. I should have known what those pictures really meant. But I'd been young and far away and stupid enough to think that people wouldn't take advantage of someone just because they were family. I stood and walked the perimeter of the pond. A strategy was forming in my mind, piece by piece. This wasn't a situation I could fix with anger or simple confrontation. I'd already tried that last night, and all it did was make them temporarily retreat. They'd be back. People like the Wellers didn't accept boundaries. They tested them, pushed them, found ways around them. I needed leverage, real leverage. Not just moral authority or righteous anger, but something concrete, something they couldn't argue with or dismiss or spin into their own narrative. I needed documentation. I needed to understand exactly what they'd done and what legal standing I had to stop it. My phone rang. Sergeant Brooks. I answered on the second ring. Asher, heard you were back stateside. Got in yesterday. How's the homecoming treating you? His voice was the same as always. Calm. Direct. No nonsense. I paused, watching a duck land on the pond. Complicated. Figured it might be. You free to talk? Now? If you want. Or later. Your call. But I've got something that might interest you. Situation you mentioned before you mustered out. About your family. I'd told Brooks some of it. Not everything, but enough. Just a few comments during our final month together. Casual observations about how communication with home had gotten strange. He'd listened the way he always did, without judgment, and told me to reach out if I ever needed anything. I hadn't expected to take him up on it this soon. Where are you? I asked. Office. Got my own security consulting firm now. Opened it 6 months ago. About 40 minutes from you, if you're still at the same address. I'll be there in 30. Take your time. I'll put coffee on. He hung up. I looked at the pond for another minute, letting my thoughts settle, then headed back to my truck. The drive gave me time to think, to plan, to consider all the angles. The Wellers had money. That meant lawyers. That meant influence. That meant they could make things difficult if I wasn't careful. But I had something they didn't. I had training. I had discipline. I had 5 years of experience in situations where one wrong move meant people ended up in body bags. I knew how to plan, how to prepare, how to execute. I just needed to apply those skills to a different kind of mission. Brooks's office was in a low-rise building off the highway, sandwiched between an insurance agency and a medical supply company. The sign out front read, Sentinel Risk Solutions, Private Security Consulting, in clean professional letters. I found him on the second floor, sitting behind a desk that looked too small for his frame. He stood when I walked in, and we shook hands the way we always had. Firm, brief, no unnecessary ceremony. You look good, he said. Considering? Considering what? That you called me at 6 a.m, asking about family law. He gestured to a chair. Sit, talk, tell me what's actually going on. I sat. He poured 2 cups of coffee from a machine behind his desk and handed me one. Then he waited, patient, giving me space to organize my thoughts. I told him everything, the apron, the comments, the way they'd taken over my mother's house and her life, the way Marissa justified it all as family obligation, as helping, as giving my mother purpose, the way my mother had been conditioned to believe she owed them something. Brooks listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands on his desk. How much did you document? He asked. Document? Photos, recordings, messages, emails, witnesses, timestamps, anything concrete that proves what you're telling me actually happened the way you're describing it. I just got home yesterday. I have the old text messages, some photos Marissa sent, but nothing recent, nothing systematic. Then that's step 1. He pulled a notepad from his desk drawer and started writing. You need documentation, real documentation, dates and times of every incident you can confirm, any written communication, texts, emails, letters, anything with a timestamp, witness statements if you can get them, though that's tricky with family situations, financial records showing any money they took or services they demanded without compensation. He paused, looking up at me. And most importantly, you need documentation of ownership. Ownership? Of the house, of assets, of anything they might claim stake in or try to leverage. He tapped his pen on the desk. Your mother owns that property, right? Outright? Yes, free and clear. Paid off 15 years ago. Good. Make sure the title's current and clean. Make sure your mother's name is the only one on it. Make sure there's no paperwork anywhere, no contracts, no agreements, no informal arrangements, giving them rights to stay there or use it or claim any kind of tenancy. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. You think they'd try something legal? People like you're describing? Absolutely. Brooks set down his pen and met my eyes. They've already convinced your mother she owes them. That's psychological groundwork. Next step is making it official. A contract, a lease, some kind of written arrangement that protects their access and makes it harder for you to remove them. They might have already done it. You need to check. How? Ask your mother, directly. Has she signed anything? Any agreements, any papers, anything at all that mentions the house or her obligations to them? If she has, you need to see those documents immediately. He leaned forward. Asher, you need to move faster than they do. Lock down what's yours before they try to take it, because right now you're playing catch-up, and in situations like this, the person who's behind usually loses. I set down my coffee cup. I'm not trying to take anything. I just want them to leave her alone. Then you need to give them a reason to. Brooks stood and walked to a filing cabinet against the wall. He pulled out a folder and dropped it on the desk between us. This is all public record information. How to file restraining orders, how to report elder exploitation, how to document patterns of coercion, how to request investigations. It's all legal, all above board, all stuff that works if you do it right. I stared at the folder. You really think it'll come to that? I think you need to be prepared for it to come to that. He sat back down, his expression serious. Look, you were a good soldier, one of the best I worked with. You followed orders, you stayed focused, you didn't let emotions cloud your judgment. You need to do that now. Treat this like a mission. Identify the objective, assess the opposition, gather intelligence, plan your approach, execute with precision. The objective is protecting my mother. Right. And the opposition? I thought about Marissa's confidence last night, about Grant's condescension, about Patricia's sweet poison. People with money, connections, and a proven track record of manipulation. Exactly. So you can't go in hot. You can't rely on moral authority or righteous anger. You need leverage. You need evidence. You need to make it more costly for them to continue than it is for them to walk away. He pushed the folder closer to me. Start here. Read everything. Take notes. Then start building your case. I picked up the folder. It was heavier than it looked. One more thing, Brooks said. You're going to need a lawyer, a good one, someone who specializes in family law and elder protection, someone who won't be impressed by the Weller's money or intimidated by their connections. You know anyone? I know someone, Joel Whitmore. Used to be a JAG attorney, now in private practice. He's methodical, patient, and he doesn't lose often. Brooks pulled out a business card and slid it across the desk. Tell him I sent you. He'll take you seriously. I pocketed the card. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You've got a lot of work ahead of you. He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. And Asher? Be careful. People like the Wellers don't like losing control. When they realize you're not backing down, they're going to escalate. Make sure you're ready for that. I shook his hand and left. Outside, the sun was fully up now. The parking lot was filling with people heading to work, normal people with normal problems. I got in my truck, set the folder on the passenger seat, and started planning my next move. My mother was making breakfast when I got home. Eggs, toast, coffee. The same breakfast she'd made every Sunday morning when I was a kid. The kitchen smelled normal again, like our kitchen, not like the staging ground for someone else's event. Marissa wasn't there. Neither were her parents. Just my mother, moving around the kitchen with the kind of practiced efficiency that comes from decades of routine. Where is everyone? I asked, sitting at the table. They left early, some kind of morning appointment. She set a plate in front of me. Marissa said they'd be back this afternoon. She wants to discuss living arrangements. Living arrangements? She thinks maybe we should all sit down and create a more formal schedule so everyone knows what's expected, when people will be here, what needs to be prepared, that kind of thing. My mother sat across from me with her own plate. She's just trying to be organized, honey. It's how her family works. I cut into my eggs. Mom, has anyone asked you to sign anything? She blinked. Sign what? Any papers, any documents, anything about the house, or agreements or obligations. No, why would they? Just checking. I took a bite, chewed, swallowed. This house is in your name, right? Just your name? Of course. Has been since your father passed, she frowned. Asher, what's going on? I'm making sure we're protected. Protected from what? From people taking advantage. She set down her fork. They're not taking advantage. They're family. Family doesn't make you work like staff. I'm not working like staff. I'm helping. Mom. I put down my own fork and looked at her directly. When's the last time they helped you? She opened her mouth, closed it, thought for a moment. They include me in their events. That's helping. That's you working. When's the last time they cooked for you, cleaned for you, did something that made your life easier instead of harder? She didn't answer. When's the last time you had a day where you didn't have to do something for them? Still no answer. Mom, I'm not trying to attack them. I'm trying to help you see what's actually happening here. They've convinced you that you owe them something, that you need to earn your place in this family, but you don't. You're not their employee, you're not their servant, you're my mother, you own this house. You don't owe anyone anything. Her eyes were getting glassy again. You don't understand. When you were gone, I was so alone. They gave me purpose. They gave you work. There's a difference. It's not work if I want to do it. Do you want to do it? She looked away. It makes them happy. That's not what I asked. Do you, Linda Solen, want to spend your days serving Marissa's family? The silence stretched out. I don't know anymore, she said finally, quietly. I don't know what I want. I just know that when I'm busy, I don't think about how scared I was, how scared I still am, that you'll leave again, that something will happen, that I'll be alone. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm not going anywhere, not for a long time, and you're not going to be alone. But you're also not going to be anyone's unpaid staff, not while I'm here. She squeezed my hand. What are you going to do? Whatever I need to. We finished breakfast in silence. Then I helped her clean up, actually helped, not just watched, and went upstairs to my room. I opened the folder Brooks had given me and started reading. 2 hours later, I had pages of notes. Legal definitions, procedures, requirements, options. Elder exploitation was a real legal category. It had specific criteria. Financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, coercion, creating dependency. Everything I'd seen in the last 24 hours fit the pattern. But proving it would be difficult. I needed documentation. I needed witnesses. I needed evidence that would hold up not just in my mind, but in a courtroom if it came to that. I picked up my phone and called the number on Brooks's business card. Joel Whitmore answered on the third ring. Whitmore Law. Mr. Whitmore, my name is Asher Solen. Sergeant Brooks gave me your number. Asher. Yes, Brooks called me this morning. Said you might reach out. What can I do for you? I gave him the shortened version. Mother, wife's family, exploitation, need for legal guidance. He listened quietly, asking occasional clarifying questions. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? He asked. Yes. 9 o'clock. Bring any documentation you have. Messages, emails, photos, financial records if you have access to them. And bring your mother if she's willing to come. I'll ask her. Good. We'll talk through your options. But Asher, based on what you're describing, you're going to need to move quickly. If they're talking about formalizing living arrangements, that means they're moving toward establishing legal rights. We need to get ahead of that. Understood. See you tomorrow. He hung up. I sat there for a minute, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. This wasn't just about kicking them out. This was about dismantling the entire structure they'd built, breaking down the psychological conditioning, proving exploitation, protecting my mother legally, financially, emotionally. It was going to get ugly. My door opened. Marissa walked in without knocking, the way she had last night. We need to talk, she said. You keep saying that. I'm serious, Asher. My parents are upset. Really upset. You embarrassed them last night, and now you're avoiding me, and this whole thing is getting out of hand. What's getting out of hand is the way you've been treating my mother. We've been over this. She's happy. She's conditioned. Marissa's eyes narrowed. Conditioned? Are you serious right now? You sound paranoid. Do I? Yes. You come home after 5 years, you see your mother helping out with family events, and suddenly you've created this whole narrative where we're the villains. It's absurd. I stood up, facing her. Is it? Is it absurd that I find my mother wearing an apron and serving your family like hired help? Is it absurd that she's been doing unpaid labor for you for years? Is it absurd that you're talking about formalizing living arrangements like this is her house? It is her house. Exactly. So why are you trying to establish schedules and obligations? To create structure, to make things easier for everyone. Or to make things harder for her to say no. Marissa's face flushed. You know what? Fine. You want to play it this way? Let's play it this way. My parents have been incredibly generous to your mother. They've included her in their lives, introduced her to important people, given her opportunities she never would have had otherwise. If you want to throw that away, if you want to isolate her again, that's on you. But don't act like you're some hero rescuing her from us. You're the one who left. You're the one who wasn't here when she needed someone. We were. Remember that. She turned and walked out, leaving the door open. I stood there, breathing carefully, keeping my anger in check. She was good, really good. She knew exactly which buttons to push, exactly how to make me doubt myself. But I'd seen the pattern now. I'd read the literature. I knew what this was, and I wasn't going to let it continue. I spent the rest of the day quietly documenting everything, took photos of my mother's house, made lists of all the events Marissa had mentioned in her messages, calculated rough estimates of hours worked, services provided, value of labor. When Marissa and her parents returned that afternoon, I was ready. They walked in like they owned the place, Grant carrying a briefcase, Patricia with a folder of her own. They settled in the living room and called for my mother. She came from the kitchen, wiping her hands. Linda, sit, Patricia said, gesturing to the couch. We need to discuss some things. My mother sat. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Grant noticed me. Asher. Good. You should hear this too. We've been talking, and we think it's time to formalize our arrangement here. What arrangement? The living arrangement. Your mother's been wonderful about hosting us, but we think it's time to put some structure in place, make sure everyone understands their responsibilities. Responsibilities, I repeated. Yes, and we've drawn up a simple agreement. Grant pulled papers from his briefcase. Nothing formal, just a document outlining how we'll share the space, what Linda's role will be in family events, expectations for maintenance and upkeep, that sort of thing. I walked over and took the papers from his hand before he could give them to my mother. I read quickly, my anger rising with every sentence. It was a residential services agreement, disguised as a family arrangement, but legally binding. My mother would provide household management services in exchange for continued residence in her own house. There were specific obligations, specific requirements, specific consequences for failure to meet standards. It was a contract that would legally establish her as their servant. No, I said. Grant blinked. Excuse me? No, she's not signing this. Asher, don't be ridiculous. It's just to protect everyone. It's to establish legal control over her and her property, and she's not signing it. Patricia stood, her sweet voice hardening. Now, you listen here. We've been more than patient with your attitude. We've tolerated your rudeness, your accusations, your complete lack of gratitude for everything we've done. But this is too much. Linda wants to sign this. Don't you, Linda? My mother looked at the papers in my hand, at Patricia, at me. She started. She doesn't, I said. And you need to leave. We're not leaving, Grant said, standing now too. We have every right to be here. No, you don't. This is her house. She hasn't invited you. You're trespassing. We're family. Family doesn't draw up service contracts. Get out. Marissa stood, her face cold. You're making a huge mistake, Asher. Huge. My father's lawyers will... Will what? Sue us for not letting you exploit my mother? Good luck with that. The room went silent. Grant grabbed his briefcase. Patricia gathered her folder. They both looked at Marissa, who stared at me with something like hatred. This isn't over, she said quietly. Yes, I replied. It is. They left. The house fell quiet again. My mother sat on the couch, shaking slightly. I sat next to her and put my arm around her shoulders. It's going to be okay, I said. I promise. She leaned against me. What did I almost do? Nothing, you didn't do anything, but you're not going to. Not ever. Outside, I heard their cars start and drive away. Tomorrow we'd go see Whitmore. Tomorrow we'd start building the legal protection we needed. But tonight, for the first time in 5 years, my mother's house was just ours. Joel Whitmore's office was in an old converted house downtown, the kind of building that had probably been a lawyer's office for 100 years. Wood paneling, leather chairs, books everywhere. It felt solid, established, like the kind of place where serious work got done. My mother sat next to me in the waiting room, nervous, twisting her hands in her lap. I'd convinced her to come, but barely. She didn't like the idea of making trouble, as she put it. I'd had to explain 3 times that we weren't making trouble. We were preventing it. A door opened, and a man in his 50s emerged. Gray hair, glasses, calm expression. Joel Whitmore. Asher, Linda, come on back. His office was quieter than the waiting room, insulated somehow. He gestured to chairs across from his desk and sat down, folding his hands. Thank you for coming, he said. I know this isn't easy. Let's start with the basics. Linda, can you tell me about your house? When you acquired it? How you acquired it? Whose name is on the title? My mother glanced at me, and I nodded encouragingly. My husband and I bought it 32 years ago, she said. We paid it off about 15 years ago, a few years before he passed. It's just in my name now. Has been for 10 years. Good. And you've never signed any documents giving anyone else rights to the property? No rental agreements, no service contracts, no informal arrangements that were put in writing? No. Yesterday was the first time they tried to get me to sign anything. Whitmore made a note. And you didn't sign it? No. Asher stopped me. Good. That's very good. He looked up. Now let's talk about what's been happening. Asher gave me an overview on the phone, but I need to hear it from you directly, in your own words. When did your daughter-in-law's family start asking you to help with events? My mother told the story. Slowly at first, then faster as she got comfortable. She talked about the first few dinner invitations, the first requests for help, how it escalated gradually, how it became expected, how she started feeling obligated. Whitmore listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When she finished, he set down his pen. Linda, I'm going to be very direct with you. What you're describing is a pattern of exploitation. They used your isolation and your fear about your son's safety to create a sense of obligation. They gradually increased their demands while framing them as family bonding. They positioned themselves as doing you a favor by keeping you busy. And yesterday, they attempted to formalize that exploitation with a legal document that would have given them significant control over you and your property. My mother's face went pale. I didn't think of it that way. Most people don't. That's how this kind of thing works. It's incremental. It's dressed up as kindness. And by the time you realize what's happened, you feel too guilty or too scared to push back. He leaned forward. But you need to understand something. What they did isn't just wrong morally. In many jurisdictions, elder exploitation is actionable, and attempting to coerce you into signing that agreement, that has legal consequences. I don't want to press charges, she said quickly. They're my daughter-in-law's family. Whitmore nodded. I understand, but we still need to protect you. Right now, you're vulnerable. You've established a pattern of compliance. You've allowed them access to your home and your labor. If we don't create legal barriers, they will come back. And next time, they'll be more careful, more strategic. So what do I do? First, we document everything, every incident, every request, every obligation they placed on you. We create a timeline, we gather evidence. He pulled out a legal pad. Second, we send a formal cease and desist letter. We make it clear that their behavior constitutes harassment and that any further contact will be considered trespassing. Will that work? I asked. It depends on how badly they want to push, but it establishes a legal record. It shows that you formally rejected their claims. He looked at my mother. Linda, do you have any friends or family who witnessed this behavior? Anyone who saw you working at their events? She thought for a moment. Maybe. My neighbor Dorothy, she commented a few times about how often they were at the house. And some of the other volunteers at the charity events, they asked why I was doing so much work when everyone else just attended. Good. We'll need statements from them if they're willing. Whitmore made more notes. Now let's talk about your son's marriage. Asher, are you planning to file for separation? I hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know yet. Well, you need to think about it. Because right now, as your spouse, Marissa has certain legal rights. Not to your mother's property, but potentially to assets you've acquired during the marriage. We don't have much. I've been deployed most of our marriage. What about savings, military benefits, any joint accounts? One joint checking account, maybe $3,000 in it. Move half of that to a personal account today. Don't empty it. That looks vindictive, but protect your half. He made another note. Do you own anything together? Car, property? No, I have my truck. She has her car, both in our own names. Good. That simplifies things. Whitmore sat back. Here's what I recommend. We prepare a comprehensive legal strategy. Cease and desist to the Wellers. Documentation of exploitation. If necessary, we file for a protective order, and you need to decide about your marriage. Soon. I looked at my mother. She looked smaller somehow, tired from reliving everything. How long will all this take? I asked. The initial documents? A few days. The rest depends on their response. If they back off, we're done. If they push, he shrugged. Then we escalate. We left his office an hour later with a plan. A real plan. Not just anger and protective instincts, but actual legal strategy. The next 3 days were methodical, clinical. I documented everything I could remember, everything my mother could remember. I talked to Dorothy next door, who was more than willing to provide a statement. I went through 5 years of messages and emails, highlighting every request, every obligation, every instance of my mother being used. Whitmore drafted the cease and desist. It was 3 pages long and very clear. The Wellers were to have no contact with Linda Solen. They were not to enter her property. They were not to make any demands or requests. Any violation would result in immediate legal action. On day 4, the letter was delivered by courier. On day 5, Grant Weller called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Asher, this is Grant. We need to talk. This legal nonsense is getting out of hand. We're family. We can work this out. Call me back. I deleted it. He called again that evening. Then Patricia called, then Marissa. I didn't answer any of them. On day 6, they showed up at the house. I was ready. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. You're in violation of the cease and desist. Grant's face was red. This is ridiculous. We're not going to be bullied by some legal theatrics. The letter was clear. No contact. You're contacting. We have rights. No, you don't. This is private property. You're trespassing. Leave now, or I call the police. Patricia stepped forward, her sweet voice gone. You ungrateful little... I pulled out my phone and started dialing. They left. But I knew it wasn't over. People like the Wellers didn't accept defeat. They regrouped. They found new angles. I was right. 2 days later, Whitmore called. Asher, they've filed a counterclaim. They're alleging that your mother entered into a verbal contract for their assistance and support. They're claiming she owes them compensation for services rendered. Services rendered? They didn't render anything. She did all the work. I know. But they're claiming they provided social integration, emotional support, and networking opportunities. They've put a dollar amount on it. $50,000. I felt my jaw tighten. They're trying to force her to pay them? They're trying to establish that there was an agreement. If they can prove that, they can claim she breached it by refusing to sign their formal contract. It's a stretch, but it's clever. What do? We fight. We provide our own documentation. We show the pattern of exploitation. We demonstrate that any agreement was coerced, not voluntary. He paused. But Asher, this is going to get expensive. Legal fees, court costs, expert witnesses if we need them. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my savings. Not much, but enough. Yes. Good. I'll start preparing our response. The next week was a blur. Depositions, documentation, Whitmore building our case piece by piece while the Wellers built theirs. They had money, they had lawyers, they had confidence. But we had the truth. And we had something else. Something I'd been holding back, waiting for the right moment. I'd gone to the base administrative office during that first week home, retrieved my service records. But I'd also retrieved something else, something I'd filed before I deployed, a document I'd almost forgotten about, a beneficiary designation, a legal document establishing that in the event of my incapacitation or removal, all benefits and rights would transfer to my mother, including power of attorney over any jointly held assets. And buried in that document, executed properly and notarized, was a clause I'd added at the last minute, a protective clause. It stated that any contracts or agreements my mother entered into while I was deployed would require my countersignature to be valid. It was meant to protect her from scams, from predatory lenders, from anyone who might try to take advantage while I was gone. I hadn't thought about protecting her from family, but the clause didn't care about intention. It cared about execution. I showed it to Whitmore. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he smiled. This changes everything. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the county courthouse. A small courtroom, administrative judge, nothing dramatic. The Wellers probably thought it would be a quick resolution in their favor. They were wrong. I sat next to my mother at the respondents' table. Whitmore was on her other side, calm and organized, his briefcase full of documents. Across the aisle, Grant and Patricia sat with their attorney, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit who kept glancing at us like we were an inconvenience. Marissa sat behind them. She hadn't looked at me once. The judge entered. Everyone stood. We sat. The proceedings began. The Wellers' attorney went first. She laid out their case smoothly, professionally. Linda Solen had voluntarily agreed to provide services for the Weller family. She had participated in dozens of events over several years. She had done so willingly, even enthusiastically. The Wellers had provided her with social opportunities, emotional support, and community integration. They had treated her like family. And then, the attorney said, when the Wellers attempted to formalize this mutually beneficial arrangement, Mrs. Solen's son returned from deployment and convinced her to reject the agreement. Not only that, but he has now pursued legal action against the Wellers, making baseless claims of exploitation. The Wellers are simply seeking compensation for the value they provided, which Mrs. Solen accepted for years before suddenly, at her son's urging, claiming she was coerced. She sat down, satisfied. Whitmore stood. He didn't rush, didn't raise his voice, just spoke clearly. Your Honor, the respondent's version of events is accurate in its basic facts, but completely wrong in its interpretation. Yes, Mrs. Solen provided services. Yes, she did so over several years, but she did not do so voluntarily in any meaningful legal sense. She did so because she was systematically manipulated by people in a position of power over her emotional well-being. He pulled out the first document. This is a timeline of contact between the Wellers and Mrs. Solen. It begins 6 months after her son's deployment. Note the progression. Initial contact, friendly, social, occasional. Month 14, requests for help begin. Month 18, help becomes expected. Month 24, Mrs. Solen is providing services weekly. By month 36, she is providing services multiple times per week. By month 48, nearly daily. He set down the timeline and picked up another document. This is a record of text messages between Mrs. Solen and Mrs. Weller over that time period. Note the language. Could you help? Becomes, we need you to help. Becomes, you're handling this, right? The language shifts from request to expectation to demand. Grant shifted in his seat. Whitmore continued. Mrs. Solen is a widow. Her son was deployed in active duty for 5 years. She was isolated, worried, and vulnerable. The Wellers exploited that vulnerability. They created a sense of obligation. They framed their demands as family support. And when they finally attempted to formalize this arrangement into a legal contract, it wasn't to protect Mrs. Solen. It was to establish legal control over her and her property. The Wellers' attorney stood. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is making arguments without evidence. Where is the proof of coercion? Whitmore smiled slightly. I'm getting to that. He pulled out another document. This is the contract the Wellers attempted to have Mrs. Solen sign. Please note Section 4, subsection C. Provider agrees to maintain premises to guest standards and provide household services as requested. Section 7. Failure to maintain agreed standards may result in renegotiation of residence terms. Your Honor, this document attempts to establish that Mrs. Solen's continued residence in her own home, which she owns free and clear, is contingent on her providing services to the Wellers. The judge frowned, reading the document. Furthermore, Whitmore said, the contract includes no compensation clause. Mrs. Solen would be providing services with no payment in exchange for being allowed to live in her own house. This isn't a service agreement. It's indentured servitude dressed up as a family arrangement. The Wellers' attorney stood again. Your Honor, that contract was never signed. It's irrelevant to these proceedings. It's absolutely relevant, Whitmore countered. It demonstrates intent. It shows what the Wellers were actually after. Not compensation for services rendered, but legal control over Mrs. Solen and her property. He pulled out another document. I recognized it. The beneficiary designation. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit F. This is a legal document executed by Mr. Asher Solen before his deployment. It establishes protective measures for his mother during his absence. Specifically, Section 3, Paragraph 2, any contracts, agreements, or legal obligations entered into by the designated beneficiary during the service member's active deployment shall require countersignature by the service member to be considered valid. The courtroom went quiet. This document, Whitmore continued, was properly executed and filed. It remains legally binding, which means that even if Mrs. Solen had signed the Wellers' contract, it would have been invalid without her son's countersignature. The Wellers either didn't know about this protective measure, or they chose to ignore it. Either way, their attempt to establish a binding agreement was legally void from the start. Grant's face was turning red. His attorney was flipping through papers, looking for something to counter with. Whitmore wasn't done. The Wellers claim they provided valuable services to Mrs. Solen. Emotional support, social integration. But let's examine what they actually did. They isolated her from her existing social network by consuming all her free time. They created financial dependency by making her feel obligated to contribute labor in exchange for basic familial inclusion. They used her fear about her son's safety to manipulate her into compliance. This isn't support. This is textbook exploitation. He set down the documents. Your Honor, the Wellers aren't owed compensation. They owe Mrs. Solen an apology, and they owe her the dignity of leaving her alone. He sat down. The judge looked at both attorneys, then at the Wellers, then at us. I'm going to take a 15-minute recess to review these documents. We'll reconvene shortly. Everyone stood. The judge left. In the hallway, Grant cornered me. You think you're clever? You think this is over? It is over. We'll appeal. We'll file a countersuit. We'll make this so expensive you'll wish you'd never started it. Go ahead, I said calmly. I've got time. I've got documentation. And I've got the truth. Patricia appeared beside her husband. You've ruined everything. Your marriage, your family. For what? Some petty revenge? For protecting my mother. She didn't need protecting. She was happy. She was conditioned. Marissa finally approached. She looked tired, smaller somehow. Is this really what you want, Asher? To destroy everything? I didn't destroy anything. You did. The moment you decided my mother was your servant instead of your family. I never... You did. You know you did. You just convinced yourself it was something else. The bailiff called us back in. The recess was over. We returned to our seats. The judge entered. I've reviewed the documents, she said. I'm ruling in favor of the respondent. The claim filed by the Wellers is dismissed. Furthermore, I'm issuing a formal protective order. The Wellers are to have no contact with Mrs. Linda Solen. They are not to enter her property. They are not to make any demands or requests. A violation of this order will result in contempt charges. Grant started to stand. His attorney pulled him back down. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm ordering the Wellers to pay Mrs. Solen's legal fees in this matter. This case was without merit and appears to have been filed as retaliation for Mrs. Solen asserting her legal rights. The amount will be determined in a separate hearing. She struck her gavel. We're adjourned. It was over. Just like that. Months of manipulation, undone in an hour. We left the courtroom. Outside the sun was bright. Too bright. Everything felt surreal. My mother hugged me. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. Whitmore shook my hand. Good work. You did everything right. Documentation, preparation, patience. That's how you win these things. What happens now? Now, you go home. You live your life. They're legally barred from contacting you. If they try, they'll face consequences. He smiled. You protected your mother. Mission accomplished. We drove home in silence. My mother kept looking out the window like she was seeing the world differently now, like something heavy had been lifted. What about Marissa? She asked finally. What about her? Are you going to file for dissolution? Yes, probably. I glanced at her. Is that okay? Honey, you don't need my permission. Oh, but yes, it's more than okay. We pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same but felt different, lighter, ours again. That night, I started the paperwork for ending my marriage. It wasn't emotional, it was just necessary, like finishing a mission that had failed before it started. 3 days later, Marissa signed the papers without contest. No arguments, no demands. Just her signature and a note. I hope you're happy. I was. Not happy that my marriage ended, but happy that my mother was free. The Wellers disappeared. No more calls, no more visits, no more demands. The protective order worked exactly as intended. Life returned to something approaching normal. My mother started seeing her old friends again, started doing things she enjoyed instead of things she was obligated to do, started smiling more. I started planning my next steps, maybe school, maybe a job, maybe just figuring out who I was outside of being a soldier. But first, I had one more thing to do. 2 months after the hearing, I got a call from Dorothy, my mother's neighbor. Asher, honey, you need to know something. The Wellers are planning a big anniversary party. 40th wedding anniversary. They're inviting everyone. Half the town, from what I hear. And they've been telling people a very different story about what happened with your mother. What kind of story? That she had a breakdown, that you manipulated her, that they tried to help but you pushed them away. They're painting themselves as the victims. I felt my jaw tighten. When's this party? Next Saturday, at the community center. Big formal event. I only know because they invited me before everything happened. I'm not going, obviously, but I thought you should know what they're saying. Thanks, Dorothy. I hung up and sat there thinking. The Wellers had lost legally, but they were winning socially, rewriting history, making themselves look good and us look unstable. I could ignore it, could let them have their party and their narrative. We had the legal victory. That should be enough. But it wasn't, because my mother would have to live in this town, would have to see these people, would have to deal with the whispers and the assumptions. I called Whitmore. The protective order prevents them from contacting us, I said. Does it prevent us from contacting them? There was a pause. What are you thinking? I'm thinking they're about to host a very public event, and I'm thinking it's time for some very public truth. Asher, think about this carefully. You won in court. That's what matters. They're out there telling everyone my mother is unstable. I'm going to correct that record. Silence on the other end. Then, as long as you're only presenting factual information from public records, then yes, technically legal. Good. The next week I prepared, not impulsively, methodically, like planning a mission. I requested copies of all public court documents from our case. The ruling, the protective order, the timeline of exploitation, the contract they'd tried to force my mother to sign, everything that was a matter of public record. I organized it into a clear, concise presentation. Facts, dates, legal outcomes, no emotional appeals, just truth. On Saturday evening, I put on my dress uniform. Clean, pressed, professional. My mother saw me getting ready. Asher, what are you doing? Going to a party. The Wellers party? Honey, no, please, the court case is over. We won. They're out there telling everyone you're unstable. I'm going to correct that record. She studied my face for a long moment, then quietly, Okay, just be safe. I will. The community center was lit up. Cars filled the parking lot. Music drifted out through open doors. Inside, I could see people in formal wear, glasses of champagne, decorated tables. I grabbed my folder and walked toward the entrance. The moment I stepped through the doors, conversations stopped. People turned. I kept walking. Grant and Patricia were at the head table with what looked like city council members and local business owners. Marissa was there too, sitting next to a man I didn't recognize. She saw me and went pale. Grant noticed the commotion and looked up. His face went from confusion to fury. You're not welcome here. It's a public event, I said calmly. In a public venue. Security. There's no security, Grant. I walked closer. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to present some information. Patricia stood. Get out. Now. I'd be happy to explain to the police why I'm here. I set my folder on a nearby table, but maybe you'd like to hear what I have to say first. So would everyone else, I imagine. The room was silent, everyone watching. I opened my folder and pulled out the first document. 2 months ago, Grant and Patricia Weller filed a legal claim against my mother, Linda Solen. They claimed she owed them $50,000. I held up the document. This is the court's ruling. The claim was dismissed as being without merit. The judge ruled in my mother's favor and issued a protective order against the Wellers. Murmurs in the crowd. People were pulling out phones. Grant started toward me. You don't know what you're... I know exactly what I'm doing. I pulled out another document. This is the timeline presented in court. It shows how the Wellers gradually increased their demands on my mother over 4 years, from occasional social contact to expecting her to work at their events multiple times per week, without compensation. Patricia's face was red. That's not how it happened. She volunteered. Did she? I pulled out the next document. This is the contract you tried to get her to sign, the one that would have made her continued residence in her own home contingent on providing you services. I looked at Patricia. Tell everyone here how that was voluntary. She couldn't. She just stood there, shaking. I addressed the room. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because for 2 months, the Wellers have been telling people that my mother had a breakdown, that I manipulated her. I'm here to set that record straight with facts, legal facts, court-documented facts. I set down the documents. Everything I've shown you is a matter of public record. Available at the courthouse. You can verify every word. Grant found his voice. Get out. Get out right now. I'm leaving. I've said what I came to say. I picked up my folder. Enjoy your party. Just remember that everyone here now knows the truth. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices, arguments, people demanding explanations from the Wellers. I didn't look back, just kept walking. I drove home. My mother was waiting. How did it go? It went exactly how it needed to. She smiled. Good. That night, I slept better than I had in months.